Hey guys, tonight we're slipping into the hazy, heady world of medieval times, where getting high wasn't just a vibe, it was practically a lifestyle. Picture yourself stumbling through a muddy village, wood smoke curling into a starry sky as a tavern's glow beckons. The air's thick with the scent of ale, herbs, and something weirder. People back then chased euphoria with reckless abandon, brewing concoctions that'd make your head spin faster than a jester's cartwheel. Fair warning, you probably won't survive this without questioning everything you thought you knew about the Middle Ages. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your city and local time. I'm curious where you're chilling tonight. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're trudging through a bustling medieval market, stalls piled high with strange roots and dried leaves. The air hums with haggling voices and the clink of coins, but your nose catches a whiff of something sharp, almost electric. A grizzled vendor, teeth stained like old parchment, holds up a gnarled root and mutters about its sky-walking powers. This is Mandrake, the rock star of medieval mind-benders. People believed it screamed when pulled from the earth, and a single nibble could send you into a dreamscape, or a coma. Mainstream history tells us Mandrake was used as an anesthetic for surgeries, knocked out patients snoring through amputations. But here's the quirky bit. Some folks swore it summoned demons if you mixed it with wine under a full moon. No wonder they kept dogs tied to the roots to yank them out. Better the mutt gets cursed than you. You sidestep a puddle, your boots squelching, and spot a woman stirring a bubbling pot. She's tossing in henbane, another medieval favorite that smells like regret and promises visions. Henbane was the go-to for witches and thrill-seekers, its seeds turning your brain into a kaleidoscope. One wrong dose, though, and you're drooling in a ditch, which is probably why half the village looks so confused. Historians still argue whether henbane's popularity was more about spiritual quests or just bored peasants wanting to party. Either way, you're not sipping that stew. The market's chaos feels alive, like a pulse. You pass a monk, his robe brushing the dirt, clutching a satchel of herbs. He's not here for fun. Monasteries were like medieval pharmacies, and monks knew their plants. They'd grind poppy seeds into painkillers, but some brews had side effects. A sip too many, and Brother Bernard's chanting about angels in the rafters. You smirk, imagining him trying to explain that to the abbot. The joke's on him, though. Poppy juice was opium's cousin, and it hooked more than a few holy men. You're starting to feel the market's rhythm, the way every stall hides a secret. A kid darts past, offering you a swig from a grimy flask. You decline, not because you're smart, but because it smells like fermented regret. That's probably mead spiked with bog myrtle, a medieval beer additive that made you see colors that don't exist. Fun fact, they called it pores in Norse lands, and Vikings chugged it like it was Gatorade. One guy probably thought his goat was Thor after a pint. You're tempted, but you've got a whole night of weird to explore, and passing out now would be, well, lame. As you weave through the crowd, you notice the sun dipping low, casting long shadows. The market's getting rowdier, and so are the smells. Herbs, sweat, and something like burnt dreams. You're not just here for the buzz. You're here to understand why medieval folks chased these highs. Was it escape from plague and war? Spiritual hunger? Or just the 13th century version of hold my ale? Whatever it was, you're hooked, and the night's just beginning. You've left the market's clamor behind, your boots now crunching on a gravel path leading to a ramshackle tavern. The air grows warmer, heavy with the tang of spilled ale, and something earthier, like damp moss set ablaze. You push open the creaky door, and a wave of smoke stings your eyes. Inside, peasants huddle around wobbly tables, their laughter slurring into a cozy din. You're not here for the stew or the dice games. You're chasing the faint, acrid whiff of herbs curling from a corner pipe. Welcome to the medieval tavern, where getting a buzz wasn't just about booze. You squeeze onto a bench, the wood splintered under your palms, and scan the room. A grizzled farmer with a beard like tangled straw puffs on a crude pipe, exhaling clouds that shimmer in the firelight. He's not smoking tobacco. That's centuries away. Instead, it's likely hemp, the medieval everyman's ticket to a fuzzy headspace. Historical records confirm hemp was grown across Europe, mostly for rope and cloth, but peasants weren't above drying its flowers for a sneaky toke. The quirky twist? Some tavern-goers swore it made them hear fairies giggling in the thatch. You lean closer, tempted to ask for a puff, but the guy's already arguing with his mug about who stole his turnips. The tavern's alive with sensory overload, crackling logs, clinking tankards, and the occasional snort from a drunkard slumped in the corner. You notice a woman, her apron stained with who knows what, passing out clay cups of frothy ale. She's spiking it with mugwort, a bitter herb that turns your dreams into a medieval IMAX show. Mugwort was a tavern staple, believed to ward off demons and maybe make you dance better. Historians still argue whether its popularity was about flavor or the trippy side effects. One sip, and you're wondering if the barmaid's secretly a sorceress. You can't help but grin at the chaos. A guy stumbles past, claiming he saw a dragon in his ale. Classic mugwort casualty. You'd laugh, but you're too busy dodging a sloshed carpenter waving a spoon like it's Excalibur. The joke's on him. His dragon is probably just the tavern cat who's now stealing his bread. You're starting to get why taverns were the heart of medieval social life. It wasn't just about drinking. It was about escaping the grind of plowing fields or dodging the Lord's taxes. Your eyes drift to a shadowy nook where a hooded figure rolls dried leaves into a pipe. Could be darnel, a rye-like weed that grows in grain fields and messes with your head if you smoke it. Farmers cursed it for ruining crops, but some cheeky souls figured out it doubled as a poor man's high. One wrong move, though, and you're hugging the floor, which smells like it hasn't been cleaned since the Crusades. You decide to stick to sniffing the air instead. The tavern's warmth is sinking into your bones, making your eyelids heavy. You remember that mandrake root from the market? Same vibe here, just smokier. These folks aren't scholars or alchemists. They're regular Joes chasing a moment of bliss. A kid, barely old enough to grow a beard, offers you a puff from his pipe. You wave him off, not because you're above it, but because you're pretty sure his herb is just dried nettles. Rookie mistake. You chuckle, thinking of the time you tried gourmet kale chips. Same energy. As you lean back, the fire's glow paints the room in flickering gold. The hemp smoker's now singing about a lost cow, and the mugwort lady's refilling cups like she's on a mission. You're not just in a tavern, you're in a living, breathing bubble of medieval escapism. The night's young, and the smoke's only getting thicker. You slip out of the tavern's smoky haze, the cool night air hitting your face like a splash of water. Your boots scuff along a cobblestone path, winding toward a stone monastery, its silhouette looming against a crescent moon. Candlelight flickers through narrow windows, and the faint hum of chants drifts out, mingling with a peculiar scent, sweet, herbal, and slightly off. You're not here to pray. You're chasing whispers of monks brewing elixirs that'd make even the holiest brother see stars. Remember that mandrake from the market? Monks had their own version of mind-bending tricks, and you're about to peek behind the cloister walls. You nudge open a heavy oak door, the hinges groaning like they're judging you. Inside, the air's thick with incense, and something sharper, like crushed leaves left to ferment. A monk, his tonsure gleaming under a swaying lantern, hunches over a wooden table cluttered with vials and dried herbs. He's grinding poppy seeds into a paste, the medieval equivalent of a prescription painkiller. Historical records show monasteries were medical hubs, dispensing poppy-based remedies for everything from toothaches to battlefield wounds. But here's the quirky bit. Some monks added belladonna, deadly nightshade, to their mixes, believing it opened the soul to divine visions. One wrong pinch and you're not seeing God, you're chatting with the floorboards. You tiptoe closer, the stone floor cold through your soles. The monk doesn't notice, too focused on his bubbling cauldron. That's probably a mix of valerian and chamomile, meant to calm restless pilgrims. But the real magic happens when they sneak in henbane. Yep, that same witchy herb from the market. A tiny dose could send you into a dreamy trance, perfect for meditating on scripture, or, let's be honest, napping through Vespers. Historians still argue whether these brews were spiritual tools or just a way to spice up the monastic grind. You're betting on both. The monastery feels like a paradox, solemn yet secretly wild. You pass a scriptorium where a young novice is doodling dragons in a manuscript's margins, his eyes glassy. Probably sneaked a sip of the special tonic. You stifle a laugh, thinking of the time you overdid it on espresso and thought your cat was plotting a coup. The novice's dragon looks suspiciously like the abbot, which is a scandal waiting to happen. You're starting to like these monks. They're not as stuffy as they look. Your nose leads you to a garden tucked behind the chapel, where rows of herbs glow under moonlight. There's wormwood, the key to absinthe's medieval cousin, used in wines that made drinkers see green fairies, or at least forget their vows. The monks claimed it was for digestion, but the twinkle in their eyes says otherwise. You pluck a leaf, rubbing it between your fingers, and the bitter scent makes your head swim. No wonder they locked these gardens at night. As you wander, you spot a clay jar labeled syrup of poppy. That's straight-up opium juice, diluted with honey to make it palatable. It was a godsend for the sick. But some monks got a bit too fond of it, drifting through prayers like they're floating on clouds. You're tempted to dip a finger, but the memory of that tavern drunk hugging the floor keeps you in check. Besides, the jar's guarded by a hawk-eyed brother who looks like he's onto you. The chants grow softer, lulling you into a cozy haze. You lean against a stone wall, the coolness grounding you. These monks weren't just brewing medicine. They were alchemists of the mind, balancing faith and curiosity. You smirk, imagining one of them trying to explain a belladonna trip to a bishop. The joke's on him. Bishops probably had their own stashes. As you breathe in the garden's perfume, you feel the night pulling you deeper into its secrets. You ease away from the monastery's herbal haven, the chants fading into a distant hum as you tread a dirt path toward a flickering bonfire. The night air carries a whiff of charred wood and something musky, like secrets brewed in a cauldron. You're heading to a clearing where shadows dance, and whispers speak of witches stirring potions that blur the line between dream and reality. Forget the tavern's rowdy haze or the monk's sneaky elixirs. This is where the medieval mind got properly unhinged. You're about to sip from the witch's brew, and it's not for the faint-hearted. You step into the circle of firelight, the ground soft with moss under your boots. A woman with eyes like polished flint stirs a pot, her fingers stained green from herbs. The steam rising from her brew smells of earth and danger, a mix of henbane and datura, plants that could send you soaring or stop your heart. Historical records note that witches were often healers, using these plants to treat ailments or induce visions for rituals. But here's the quirky tidbit. Some smeared datura salves on their skin, believing it let them fly to spirit realms. Spoiler, they were just tripping hard, sprawled in the dirt, thinking they're riding broomsticks. You crouch near the fire, its warmth licking your face, and watch her toss in a handful of mandrake shavings. Yep, that screaming root from the market. The brew bubbles like it's alive, and you're half convinced it's staring back. These potions weren't just for kicks. They were gateways to the divine or the demonic, depending on who you asked. Historians still argue whether witches used these brews for rebellion against the church or just to cope with a world that burned them at the stake. You're leaning toward both, but you're not dumb enough to test her patience by asking. The clearing feels electric, like the air's holding its breath. A younger woman, her hair tangled with leaves, passes you a wooden cup. The liquid inside is dark, swirling like a storm cloud. You hesitate, remembering that tavern drunk hugging the floor. One sip of this could make you see gods or goats tap dancing. Hard to say which is worse. You fake a cough and set it down, earning a smirk from the brewer. She's probably seen your type before. Curious, but chicken. You can't help but chuckle at the scene. A guy nearby is muttering to a tree, claiming it's his long-lost cousin. Classic Datura move. You're tempted to tell him it's just a shrub, but he's too far gone, and honestly, it's kind of wholesome. The joke's on you, though. Last week, you swore your Wi-Fi router was judging you after one too many energy drinks. Same vibe, different century. Your eyes wander to a pile of dried mushrooms by the cauldron. Those are likely liberty caps, the medieval psychedelic that grew wild in damp meadows. Peasants and witches alike munched them for visions, thinking they were chatting with angels. The truth? They were just high, staring at clouds like they held the meaning of life. You're starting to get why these gatherings were so popular. Nothing says, forget the plague, like a mushroom-fueled chat with the divine. As the fire crackles, you notice the group's rhythm. Some sway, others whisper, all lost in their own worlds. The brew keeps bubbling, and the head witch starts chanting, her voice low and hypnotic. You're not sure if it's the smoke or the vibe, but your eyelids are getting heavy. This isn't just a potion party. It's a rebellion against a world of rules and fear. You smirk, imagining the local priest's face if he caught wind of this. He'd probably faint, then secretly ask for a to-go cup. The night's deepening, and the brew's scent is sinking into your bones. You're not drinking tonight, but you're hooked on the energy, the way these outcasts carved their own slice of freedom. The fire's glow pulls you in, and you're ready for whatever's next. You slip away from the witch's fire-lit circle, the chants echo fading as you crunch through frost-kissed grass toward a grand stone manor. Torches blaze along its walls, casting shadows that dance like drunken courtiers. The air smells of roasted meat, spiced wine, and something faintly floral teasing your senses. You're crashing a noble's feast, where the elite didn't just dine. They chased hallucinations with dishes that'd make a monk blush. Forget the tavern's hemp or the witch's datura. This is high society getting high, and you're sneaking in for a taste. You slip through a side door, the hall bursting with color, tapestries, flickering candelabras, and nobles in silks that cost more than a village. A long table groans under platters of peacock, figs, and goblets of ruby-red wine. You catch a whiff of saffron, but there's something else. Nutmeg, piled into sauces like it's going out of style. Historical records confirm nutmeg was a luxury spice, used to flaunt wealth and aid digestion. But here's the quirky bit. In large doses, it's a hallucinogen, turning feasts into a blurry wonderland. One noble's already giggling at his spoon, swearing it's winking at him. You weave through the crowd, your borrowed cloak barely passing muster. A servant offers you a slice of spiced custard, its surface dusted with enough nutmeg to launch a rocket. You take a bite, the creamy sweetness masking a bitter kick. Your head tingles, and the room's colors seem louder. Nobles loved this stuff, chasing euphoria to impress their guests, or just to survive another dull loot recital. Historians still argue whether these feasts were about status or secret quests for transcendence. You're betting on vanity, but the custard's making you philosophical. The hall's a sensory overload, clinking goblets, raucous laughter, and a minstrel butchering a love ballad. You spot a lord, his face flushed, describing a vision of golden stags prancing through the chandelier. Classic nutmeg overdose. You stifle a laugh, remembering when you overdid the energy drinks and thought your couch was a spaceship. The joke's on him. His stags are just candlelight flickering on the silverware. You're starting to see why these feasts were legendary. It's less about food and more about who can stay upright longest. Your eyes land on a side table with a pitcher of hippocras, a spiced wine laced with cloves, and something sharper, maybe wormwood, that monkish favorite from the monastery garden. It's milder than the witch's brews, but still packs a dreamy punch, perfect for loosening tongues or sparking a duel over who gets the last quail. You pour a splash, swirling it in your goblet. The scent alone makes your thoughts wobble, like you're one sip away from joining the Stag Guys fan club. As you sip, you notice a lady in a velvet gown, her eyes glassy, whispering about angels in the rafters. She's not drunk, just riding the nutmeg wave. You're tempted to warn her about the crash, but she's already waltzing with an imaginary partner. The scene's absurdly charming, like a Renaissance fair with better costumes and worse decisions. You smirk, imagining the steward's face when he tallies the spice bill. He'll need a stiff drink himself. The feast's rhythm pulls you in, nobles boasting, servants scurrying, and the occasional crash of a goblet. You lean against a pillar, the stone cool against your back, and let the chaos wash over you. These folks weren't just eating, they were performing, using food as a ticket to another plane. You're not sure if it's the hippocras or the vibe, but your eyelids are drooping, the room softening into a warm blur. The night's still young, and the manor's secrets are calling. You slip out of the manor's gilded chaos, the clink of goblets fading as you step into the crisp night. Your boots sink into soft earth, guiding you toward a cluster of thatched huts where candlelight spills through cracked shutters. The air carries the scent of hay, sweat, and a faint, smoky tang, like the tavern's hemp, but earthier. You're back among the peasants, where getting high isn't about nutmeg-dusted custards, but gritty homemade pipes stuffed with whatever grows in the fields. These farmers aren't chasing status. They're after a fleeting escape from dawn to dusk drudgery. You duck into a low-roofed hut, the air thick with haze. A group of weathered men and women sit in a circle, passing a crude pipe carved from bone. The smoke curling from it smells like burnt grass and dreams. They're puffing on dried hemp flowers, the same stuff you saw in the tavern, but less refined, plucked straight from the hedgerows. Historical records show hemp was a peasant staple, grown for cloth, but smoked for relief from aching backs and empty stomachs. Here's the quirky bit. Some swore it let them talk to their dead ancestors, though most just ended up giggling at the chickens. You're tempted to join, but the pipe's owner looks like he'd fight you for the last puff. You settle on a straw mat, the floor cool beneath you, and watch the ritual unfold. The pipe passes slowly, each inhale softening the room's edges. One woman, her hands calloused from the plow, exhales and claims she sees her lost cow in the rafters. You glance up. Nothing but cobwebs. Still, you get it. These folks aren't scholars. They're surviving. And this pipe's their ticket to a softer world. Historians still argue whether peasant drug use was rebellion against feudal lords or just a way to cope with mud and misery. You're leaning toward survival, but the haze is making you sentimental. the huts alive with low murmurs and the occasional snort of laughter. A guy with a patchy beard offers you a swig of cloudy ale, probably spiked with bog myrtle like that market flask. It's not as fancy as the Manners Hippocras, but it's got that same dreamy kick, turning your thoughts into a lazy river. You take a sip, the bitterness grounding you, and pass it back. The guy's now ranting about a talking hedgehog he met last week. Classic Myrtle move. You chuckle, remembering when you swore your GPS was flirting with you after too much coffee. Same energy, different stakes. Your eyes drift to a corner where a woman rolls more hemp into a fresh pipe. She's humming, her fingers nimble despite the late hour. You notice a pile of dried leaves nearby. Could be mullein, a common weed smoked to ease coughs, but known to blur your senses if you overdo it. Peasants weren't picky. If it grew and burned, it was fair game. One wrong leaf, though, and you're napping in the pigsty, which smells worse than the tavern floor. You're content to watch, letting the smoke weave its spell. The hut's warmth wraps around you, the crackle of a small fire mixing with the group's soft chatter. You lean back, straw poking through your cloak, and feel the weight of their lives, endless fields, hungry winters, and lords who don't care. This pipe, this ale, it's their rebellion, small but stubborn. You smirk, imagining the local knight's face if he caught them. He'd probably demand a hit before lecturing. The joke's on him. His fancy wine's no match for this raw, earthy buzz. As the pipe makes another round, the room feels softer, like you're sinking into a dream. You're not smoking, but the haze is enough, curling into your lungs and slowing your pulse. These peasants aren't just getting high, they're claiming a sliver of joy in a world that offers none. The night hums with their quiet defiance, pulling you deeper into its rhythm. You ease out of the peasant hut, the smoky warmth clinging to your cloak as you step into the chilly night. Your boots crunch on frost-dusted grass, leading you toward a flickering lantern glow in a cluttered courtyard. The air smells of charcoal, molten metal, and a sharp, almost medicinal tang that prickles your nose. You're sneaking into an alchemist's workshop, where the line between science and sorcery blurs, and potions don't just lift your mood, they melt your mind. Forget the witch's brews or the peasant's pipes. These guys are cooking up chaos in vials, and you're here to watch it bubble. You slip through a creaky door, the room a maze of alembics, crucibles, and shelves stuffed with jars of questionable sludge. A bearded man in a stained robe hunches over a bubbling flask, his eyes wild under the lantern's sway. The liquid inside glows faintly green, smelling like regret and lightning. He's likely distilling mercury with herbs like mandrake or belladonna, chasing the fabled elixir of the mind. Historical records show alchemists were early chemists, mixing plants and metals to cure or enlighten. But here's the quirky bit. Some believed their potions could turn lead into gold and let you chat with angels. Spoiler: most just got a headache. Or worse. You sidestep a pile of scorched scrolls, the floor gritty under your boots, and peer into the flask. The fumes make your head swim, like you've sniffed a medieval energy drink. Alchemists loved risky plants, datura, henbane, even nightshade, blending them with minerals in a quest for transcendence. One wrong whiff, and you're not finding nirvana, you're drooling on the workbench. Historians still argue whether these experiments were proto-science or just glorified drug trips. You're betting on both, but you're keeping your distance from that flask. The workshop hums with chaotic energy, hiss of steam, clink of glass, and the alchemist muttering in Latin like he's arguing with the devil. You spot a jar labeled aqua vitae, a potent spirit spiked with wormwood. the monk's old trick. It's not just booze, it's a mind bender that could make you see dragons or forget your own name. You're tempted to sneak a sip, but the memory of that noble giggling at his spoon keeps you grounded. Besides, the alchemist's glaring like he knows you're not here to apprentice. You can't help but grin at the absurdity. A rat scampers across the floor, and the alchemist swears it's his old mentor, reincarnated. Classic belladonna haze. You're reminded of that time you thought your toaster was sending you coded messages after too many late-night snacks. The joke's on him. His mentor just stole a crust of bread. You're starting to get why alchemists were both revered and feared. They're one bad batch away from burning the village down. Your eyes drift to a dusty tome, open on a table. Its pages scribbled with recipes for visionary tinctures. One calls for poppy sap and crushed mushrooms, liberty caps like the witches used. These weren't just for fun. Alchemists thought they unlocked cosmic secrets. The truth? They were tripping so hard they saw stars in their soup. You lean closer, the parchment's musty scent grounding you, and wonder how many alchemists accidentally poisoned themselves chasing the universe. The lantern flickers, casting shadows that dance like specters. You lean against a cold stone wall, the workshop's chaos sinking into your bones. This isn't just a lab. It's a battleground of ambition and madness. You smirk, imagining the local lord's face if he knew his wise scholar was high as a kite. The joke's on him. He's probably funding this madness. As the flask bubbles louder, you feel the night pulling you deeper, its secrets glowing like that eerie green brew. You slip out of the alchemist's cluttered workshop, the green glow of his potion fading as you step into a misty grove. The air is damp, heavy with pine and the faint, earthy scent of mushrooms. Moonlight filters through twisted branches, guiding you toward a circle of cloaked figures chanting softly around a smoldering fire. These are mystics, seekers of divine visions, and they're not sipping tavern ale or alchemist's brews. They're chewing plants to chase the face of God. You're here to join their quest, where the medieval mind soared beyond the physical, and you're ready to feel the vibe. You settle on a mossy log, the ground cool beneath you, and watch a mystic with a tangled beard pass around a handful of dried liberty cap mushrooms. Their wrinkled caps glint in the firelight, unassuming but potent. Historical records show mystics across Europe used these psychedelics in rituals, believing they opened doors to spiritual realms. But here's the quirky bit. Some claimed they saw saints knitting clouds or heard trees recite psalms. You're not sure if it's divine or just a wild trip. But the mystic's eyes, wide, almost glowing, make you curious. You're offered a mushroom, its texture gritty against your fingers. You hesitate, remembering that nobles' golden stags back at the feast. These liberty caps are no joke. One bite, and you're either chatting with angels or convincing yourself the fire's a talking dragon. You pass it back, earning a knowing nod from the mystic. They're not here to judge. They're here to transcend. Historians still argue whether these visions were genuine revelations or just chemical tricks. You're leaning toward a mix of faith and fungi, but the fire's warmth is making you open-minded. The grove hums with energy, crackling flames, rustling leaves, and the mystic's low rhythmic chants. A woman with silver-streaked hair sways, muttering about a golden ladder to the stars. You squint at the sky. Nothing but clouds. Still, her conviction's infectious, and you're half tempted to believe her. You chuckle, thinking of the time you stayed up too late binge-watching sci-fi and swore your lamp was an alien beacon. The joke's on her, though. Her ladder might just be a spiderweb catching the moonlight. Your eyes drift to a small clay pot by the fire, filled with crushed leaves. Maybe ergot, a moldy rye fungus that mimics LSD. Mystics sometimes brewed it into teas, thinking it summoned divine light. The catch? Too much, and you're convulsing, not communing. They called it holy fire, but it burned more than souls. You're glad they're sticking to mushrooms tonight. The vibe's already intense enough. The mystics' chants grow louder, weaving a spell that makes the grove feel alive, like the trees are listening. As you lean back, the logs bark rough against your cloak. You notice a younger mystic sketching symbols in the dirt. He's high, sure, but focused, like he's mapping the cosmos. You admire the effort. Last time you tried drawing under stress, it was a stick figure that looked like a sad potato. The mystics aren't just tripping. They're searching, using plants to bridge the gap between Earth and eternity. You smirk, imagining the local priest's horror at this heresy. He'd probably faint, then ask for a mushroom to study later. The fire's glow softens, and the chants slow, wrapping you in a cozy haze. You're not eating mushrooms, but the air's thick with their earthy scent, and it's enough to blur your thoughts. This isn't just a ritual, it's a rebellion against a world of dogma, a quiet claim to something bigger. You feel the night's pulse, steady and ancient, pulling you deeper into its embrace. You drift away from the mystic's grove, the fire's glow fading as your boots crunch over dew-soaked grass toward a distant clash of steel. The air grows sharp with sweat, leather, and a bitter herbal scent that cuts through the morning mist. You're stumbling onto a battlefield, where knights and foot soldiers brace for a bloody charge. But this isn't just about swords and glory. Warriors are chewing roots and swigging potions to spark a fearless buzz, turning fear into frenzy. You're here to see how medieval fighters got high to survive the chaos, and it's wilder than any tavern brawl. You crouch behind a splintered cart, the ground muddy under your knees, and watch a grizzled soldier pass a leather flask to his mate. It's not ale, it's a murky brew of ephedra, a plant that revs your heart like a medieval Red Bull. Historical records show warriors used ephedra to boost stamina, letting them charge through exhaustion and terror. But here's the quirky bit. Some mixed it with mead, thinking it made them invincible, only to end up sprinting straight into a ditch. You wince as one guy chugs the flask, his eyes already twitching like he's ready to wrestle a bear. The battlefield's a sensory storm, clanging armor, shouted orders, and the thud of hooves. You spot a knight, his visor up, chewing a wad of beetle nut, another stimulant that stains his teeth red and keeps him wired. It's like he's popping caffeine pills before a joust. The stuff's bitter, but it sharpens focus, or makes you think you're a god until an arrow proves otherwise. Historians still argue whether these stimulants were tactical tools or desperate bids to outrun panic. You're betting on both, but the knight's manic grin suggests he's not overthinking it. You duck lower as arrows whistle overhead, your heart pounding despite not touching the flask. A foot soldier nearby is rubbing a salve on his arms, probably henbane mixed with fat, like the witches used. It dulls pain and pumps courage, but too much, and he's swinging at shadows instead of enemies. You can't help but chuckle at the irony. Last week, you chugged an energy drink and thought you could outrun your to-do list. Same vibe, less bloodshed. The joke's on him, though. His shadow is just a flapping banner, and he's yelling at it like it stole his lunch. Your eyes catch a healer darting through the ranks, handing out strips of dried poppy bark. It's opium's raw cousin, chewed to numb wounds or calm nerves before the clash. It's a godsend when you're staring down a lance, but some soldiers overdo it, slumping in the mud like they're napping through the apocalypse. You're tempted to grab a piece, if only to ease the tension, but the memory of that alchemist's drooling apprentice keeps you sharp. Besides, the healer's too busy dodging a stray axe. The battle's rhythm is relentless: screams, metal, and the occasional war horn. You notice a young squire, barely old enough to shave, sipping from a vial of something dark. Could be mandrake wine, a risky boost that makes you feel like a giant until you're tripping over your own shield. He's muttering about avenging his lord, but his pupils are huge, and you're pretty sure he's seeing unicorns. You smirk, imagining the commander's face when his squire charges the wrong army. The joke's on him. He'll be cleaning stables if he survives this. As you hunker down, the ephedra's sharp scent lingers, mixing with the battlefield's chaos. These warriors aren't just fighting. They're hacking their minds to endure the unendurable. The mist swirls, and the battle's roar pulls you in, your pulse sinking with its frantic beat. You're not joining the charge, but you're hooked on the raw, desperate energy of survival. You slip away from the battlefield's clamor, the clash of steel fading as your boots sink into a trampled path leading to a vibrant fairground. The air buzzes with laughter, fiddles, and the sweet, sticky scent of honeyed ale spiked with something wild. Torches cast a golden glow over stalls and dancing crowds, their shadows swirling like they're in on the party. You're crashing a medieval festival where the line between celebration and chaos blurs, and mind-altering drinks flow freer than gossip. Forget the battlefield's grim buzz. This is the people's playground, and you're here to dance through the frenzy. You weave through the crowd, the ground slick with spilled mead and crushed petals. A vendor with a gap-toothed grin thrusts a clay mug into your hands, its contents frothy and flecked with herbs. It's ale laced with bog myrtle, that peasant favorite from the hut, but festival grade, strong enough to make your head hum like a beehive. Historical records show festivals were social pressure valves, where villagers drank to forget taxes and plagues. But here's the quirky bit. Some brews included yarrow, believed to spark prophetic dreams. One gulp, and you're either seeing the future or arguing with a juggler about who stole your destiny. You take a cautious sip, the bitter tang grounding you as the fair's chaos swirls. The mug's warmth seeps into your palms, and you feel the crowd's pulse. Drunk, joyful, reckless. A woman in a flower crown spins past, claiming she saw a fairy in her ale. You squint at your mug, nothing but foam. Still, you get it. These festivals weren't just parties. They were escapes, where a good brew could make you forget the Lord's whip or the church's glare. Historians still argue whether these drinks were about fun or ritual magic. You're betting on both, but the ale's making you lean toward fun. The fairground's a sensory feast, roasting chestnuts, clattering dice, and a piper who's either genius or tone-deaf. You spot a group passing a jug of festival wine, likely spiked with wormwood, that monastic standby. It's milder than the witch's datura, but still turns your thoughts into a lazy waltz. One guy's already wobbling, swearing the bonfire's singing his name. You chuckle, remembering when you overdid the caffeine and thought your fridge was humming a pop song. The joke's on him. His singing fire is just a drunk bard yelling off-key. Your eyes catch a stall piled with dried herbs, including betony, a festival favorite said to ward off evil and maybe make you see sparkles. Folks crushed it into their drinks, hoping for visions or at least a good story. Too much, and you're hugging a tent pole, which smells better than the tavern floor, but not by much. You're tempted to buy a pinch, but the vendor's haggling with a guy who's offering a chicken for a sack of it. You move on, dodging a juggler who's clearly sampled his own wares. As you wander, you notice a circle of dancers, their steps sloppy but spirited. They're chugging from a shared flagon, probably mead with a dash of henbane, just enough to loosen limbs without knocking them out. The vibe's infectious, and you're half tempted to join, but your last dance move was more awkward shuffle than medieval groove. You smirk, imagining the priest's face if he saw this pagan-flavored chaos. He'd probably sermonize, then sneak a sip when no one's looking. The joke's on him. These dancers are outliving his lectures. The bonfire's heat kisses your face as you lean against a cart. The ales buzz, softening the world's edges. This isn't just a party. It's a rebellion against a life of toil, a fleeting claim to joy. The fiddles wail, the crowd roars, and you feel the night's rhythm pulling you deeper, like a tide you don't want to fight. Your eyelids droop, but the fair's energy keeps you tethered, ready for whatever's next. You wander from the festival's roaring bonfires, the fiddles wail softening as your boots tread a cobblestone path toward a looming castle. The night air carries the scent of polished wood, wax candles, and a faint, syrupy sweetness that clings to your senses. You're sneaking into a royal court where kings and queens didn't just rule. They dulled their pains with opiates, chasing escape from the weight of crowns and conspiracies. Forget the festival's wild mead. This is high-stakes indulgence, and you're slipping through the velvet curtains to see it unfold. You ease past a dozing guard, his snores blending with the distant lute's hum, and step into a lavish hall. Tapestries glow under torchlight, and a long table holds silver goblets and a crystal vial filled with a dark, sticky liquid. That's laudanum's ancestor. Poppy sap mixed with wine and honey, a royal favorite for soothing aches or silencing doubts. Historical records confirm medieval nobles used opium-based remedies for everything from insomnia to battle wounds. But here's the quirky bit. Some queens swore it sharpened their dreams, revealing omens in the haze. You spot a lady-in-waiting sipping from a tiny spoon, her eyes half closed like she's decoding the stars. You glide closer, the marble floor cool under your boots, and catch the vial's cloying scent. It's not just medicine, it's a royal crutch, letting kings forget their scheming cousins or the plague knocking at the gates. One drop too many, though, and you're not ruling, you're napping through a coup. Historians still argue whether royals used opiates for health or to dodge reality's sharp edges. You're betting on both, but the lady's dreamy smile suggests she's not overanalyzing it. The hall's a quiet storm. Whispered plots, rustling silks, and the occasional clink of a goblet. You notice a king, his crown slightly askew, stirring a goblet of spiced wine. It's probably laced with poppy extract, keeping his nerves steady while his advisors bicker. He mutters about a vision of victory, but his slurred words hint he's seeing more than battle plans. You stifle a chuckle, remembering when you overdid the cold meds and thought your cat was giving you life advice. The joke's on him. His vision is likely just the chandelier sparkling too brightly. Your eyes drift to a corner where a physician, his robe embroidered with stars, refills the crystal vial. He's mixing in a pinch of mandrake, that old market standby, to boost the potion's kick. It's a risky move. Mandrake can turn a royal nap into a week-long fog. You're tempted to whisper a warning, but the physician's glare says he's heard it all before. Besides, the court's too busy scheming to notice their kings drifting off. As you lean against a velvet-draped wall, you spot a young prince sneaking a sip from a hidden flask. Could be opium syrup, or maybe just strong mead, but his giddy smirk screams trouble. He's giggling about a talking falcon, which is either a bad trip or a really good story. You smirk, imagining the queen's face when she catches him. She'll probably lecture him, then borrow the flask for her own headache. The joke's on her. The court's a circus, and everyone's juggling their own vices. The hall's warmth wraps around you, the opiate's sweet scent mingling with candle wax. You feel the court's pulse, decadent, secretive, fragile. These royals aren't just medicating, they're hiding from a world that demands their strength. The lute's melody slows, and your eyelids grow heavy, the scene softening into a golden blur. You're not sipping their potions, but the air's enough, pulling you deeper into the night's quiet intrigues. You glide out of the royal court's opulent haze, the lute's echo fading as your boots tap along a winding path to a quiet village. The air is crisp, scented with damp earth and the faint green tang of crushed herbs. Lanterns glow softly from thatched cottages, and you're drawn to a small hut where smoke curls from a chimney, carrying whispers of herbalist secrets. You're stepping into the world of village healers, where recipes for relief were as potent as they were perilous, and every remedy held a gamble. Forget the court's syrupy opiates. This is raw, earthy medicine, and you're here to uncover its risks. You nudge open the hut's door, the wood rough under your palm, and step into a warm, cluttered space. Shelves sing with jars of dried leaves, roots, and questionable powders, while a fire crackles under a bubbling pot. An old herbalist, her hands stained like inked parchment, grinds poppy seeds with a pestle, her eyes sharp despite the late hour. Historical records show herbalists were the backbone of medieval medicine, using poppy for pain relief and sleep. But here's the quirky bit. Some mixed it with hemlock, thinking it boosted the effect, only to send patients into a permanent nap. You eye her mortar warily, hoping she's skipped the hemlock tonight. You settle on a creaky stool, the air thick with the pot's steam. Valerian and chamomile, likely, with a hint of something sharper, maybe henbane. That's the witch's old friend, used here to ease cramps, but risky enough to blur your vision if she overdoes it. The herbalist hands you a clay cup of her calming tea, its warmth seeping into your fingers. You sniff it, remembering the festival's yarrow ale that promised prophecies. One sip could soothe you, or make you see the hut's cat as a philosopher. You set it down, earning a knowing chuckle from her. Historians still argue whether herbalists were healers or accidental poisoners. You're leaning toward both, but you're not testing her tea. The hut's alive with soft sounds. Fires pop, pestles scrape, and the herbalist's humming. A young apprentice sorts leaves, muttering about a vision root that sounds like mandrake. He's probably dreaming of fame, but one wrong root, and he's out cold beside the firewood. You stifle a laugh, recalling when you misread a recipe and turned cookies into charcoal. The joke's on him. His vision is likely just a headache waiting to happen. You're starting to respect the herbalist's skill. She's navigating a minefield of plants with only folklore as her map. Your eyes drift to a shelf holding a jar of ergot, that mystic's rye fungus, used for childbirth but notorious for sparking hallucinations or worse. A pinch in a tonic could ease labor. A smidge too much, and the village is dancing with imaginary demons. You're glad she's not reaching for it, but the jar's dark grains glint like trouble. The herbalist catches your glance and winks, as if she knows every plant's secret, and yours too. You shift on the stool, suddenly aware of the hut's cozy weight. As you lean back, the fire's glow paints the walls in flickering gold. You notice a bundle of betony, the festival herb, tied above the door to ward off evil, or maybe just bad vibes. It's a small comfort in a world where a fever could end you. You smirk, imagining the local lord's face if he knew his wise woman was brewing potions stronger than his wine. The joke's on him. He's probably her best customer. The herbalist's work isn't just healing, it's survival, balancing hope and hazard in every leaf. The steam's scent wraps around you, softening your thoughts like a lullaby. You're not drinking her tea, but the hut's warmth is enough, easing you into a dreamy haze. This isn't just a healer's den, It's a fragile thread holding the village together. The fire pops, and the night's quiet rhythm pulls you deeper, ready for its next secret. You step out of the herbalist's hut, the fire's warmth lingering on your skin as you wander toward the village's edge, where the scent of salt and tar grows sharp. Your boots sink into sandy soil, and the distant crash of waves guides you to a weathered dock, where a creaking ship sways under lantern light. The air is thick with brine, sweat, and a boozy, almost medicinal tang that stings your nose. You're joining a crew of sailors, lost in grog-soaked trances, chasing highs to dull the sea's relentless grip. Forget the herbalist's risky tease. This is raw, reckless escape, and you're here to sail through the haze. You clamber onto the deck, the wood slick under your boots, and dodge a sailor sloshing a dented tankard. The grog inside, rum mixed with water, herbs, and whatever's on hand, smells like regret and rebellion. Historical records show grog was a naval staple, stretching rations and boosting morale on grueling voyages. But here's the quirky bit. Some crews spiked it with bog myrtle or even opium scraps, turning their drinks into a ticket to La La Land. One sailor's already swaying, swearing the mast is his long-lost wife. You're tempted to ask for a sip, but his wild eyes suggest it's stronger than the festival's ale. You lean against a barrel, the ship's sway rocking you gently, and watch the crew pass the tankard. A grizzled captain, his beard salt-crusted, downs a gulp and mutters about sea serpents circling the hull. It's probably just the grog, laced with wormwood maybe, like the monk's old brew. The stuff could blur the line between ocean and dream, making storms feel like adventures, or sharks like old pals. Historians still argue whether sailors drank to cope with scurvy and storms, or to chase visions in the endless waves. You're betting on both, but the captain's grin says he's not sweating the details. The deck's alive with chaos, creaking ropes, slurred shanties, and the slap of waves. You spot a young deckhand rubbing a salve on his hands, likely henbane mixed with grease to ease rope burns. It dulls pain, but can spark hallucinations, and he's squinting at the stars like they're spelling his name. You chuckle, remembering when you overdid the cough syrup and thought your lamp was winking at you. The joke's on him. His stars are just fireflies, and he's whispering love poems to them. You're starting to get why sailors were half mad. The sea's brutal, and grog's their only friend. Your eyes catch a crate stuffed with dried leaves. Beetle nut, maybe, chewed for a buzz that keeps you alert through night watches. It's bitter, stains your teeth, and makes you feel like you can outswim a kraken. Too much, though, and you're spitting red and seeing mermaids who aren't there. You're content to watch, letting the grog's sharp scent weave its spell. A sailor offers you a swig, but you wave it off, recalling the herbalist's tea that nearly lured you. The ship's no place to lose your head? As you settle against the barrel, the ocean's rhythm, splash, creak, sigh, blends with the crew's laughter. You notice a cabin boy, barely a teen, sneaking a gulp from a hidden flask. Could be poppy-laced rum, a trick to numb homesickness. He's giggling about a talking gull, which is either a bad trip or a good imagination. You smirk, imagining the captain's face when he catches the kid. He'll probably growl, then steal a sip himself. The joke's on him. The sea's the real boss, and grog's just a shaky truce. The lantern's glow softens, and the grog's fumes wrap you in a cozy fog. You're not drinking, but the ship's sway and the crew's wild tales are enough, pulling you into their world of salt and delirium. This isn't just a voyage. It's a fight to stay sane on an endless horizon. The waves keep crashing, and the night's pulse carries you deeper, ready for its next secret. You climb down from the ship's swaying deck, the ocean's rhythm fading as your boots hit the shore and carry you back toward the village. The air grows heavy with the acrid smell of decay, and the faint, cloying scent of herbs burned to mask it. Lanterns flicker weakly in a plague-ravaged hamlet, where desperation breeds remedies as wild as the disease itself. You're stepping into a world of painkillers and prayers, where medieval folk fought death with potions that blurred the line between cure and escape. Forget the sailor's grog. This is survival in the shadow of the Black Death, and you're here to witness the struggle. You slip into a cramped healer's tent, the canvas damp under your fingers, and find a scene of quiet chaos. A woman with hollow eyes stirs a pot over a smoldering fire, the steam thick with poppy and valerian. Her plague tonic is a lifeline for the fevered bodies sprawled on straw mats. Historical records show poppy-based remedies were common during the 14th century plague, used to dull pain and calm panic. But here's the quirky bit. Some healers added ergot, that mystic's fungus, believing it fought infection. Instead, it often sent patients into hallucinatory spirals, seeing angels or demons before the fever took them. You kneel beside a mat, the air sharp with sweat and herbs, and watch the healer spoon her tonic into a patient's trembling mouth. The poppy soothes, but too much could stop their breath. A risk she knows but takes. You're reminded of the herbalist's hemlock gamble, though this feels grimmer. The patient mumbles about a glowing stag, a fever dream, or ergot's trick. Historians still argue whether these remedies were acts of mercy or desperate stabs in the dark. You're leaning toward mercy, but the tent's weight makes you question everything. The tent hums with low moans, and the fires crackle. You notice a clay jar of mandrake paste, that market root, smeared on wounds to numb pain. It's a small mercy, but one misjudged dose, and the patient's not waking up. You wince, recalling when you overdid the painkillers and thought your couch was floating. The joke's on the healer. She's juggling life and death with no guide but hope. You're starting to see why plague-time healers were both saviors and scapegoats. One bad batch, and the village turns on them. Your eyes catch a bundle of dried betony hanging from the tent's frame, burned to purify the air. It's the festival herb, now a frail shield against disease. Some swear it keeps death at bay. Others say it just smells better than the rot. You're not convinced, but the healer's steady hands keep mixing, her focus a quiet defiance. A young boy, assisting her, passes you a cup of chamomile tea. Safe, he insists. You sip, the warmth grounding you, but you're wary after the sailor's grog. The boy's eyes are glassy, maybe from exhaustion or a sneaky taste of poppy. As you sit back, the tent's canvas flaps in the night breeze, carrying the faint wail of a mourner outside. You spot a vial of henbane oil, used to ease muscle spasms, but risky enough to spark visions of hell. The healer avoids it tonight, sticking to her poppy brew, but the vial's presence looms. You smirk, imagining the priest's face if he knew she's using witch herbs. He'd probably exorcise the tent, then beg for a dose to sleep. The joke's on him. Faith's no match for plague's terror, and she's the only one fighting. The fire's glow softens the tent's edges, and the poppy's sweet scent weaves through the air, lulling you despite the grim scene. You're not sick, but the weight of suffering sinks into your bones, tempered by the healer's stubborn hope. This isn't just medicine. It's a battle to steal moments from death. The night's quiet hum pulls you deeper, ready for its final secrets. You step out of the plague tent's heavy air, the healer's fire fading as your boots carry you through the village, now hushed under a blanket of stars. The night is cool, scented with dew, and the faint, soothing aroma of lavender drifting from a nearby cottage. You're drawn to a cluster of homes where soft smoke rises, not from hearths but from clay burners puffing calming vapors. This is the sleepy village at its quietest, where folk inhale gentle fumes to drift into dreams, chasing peace in a world of toil and fear. Forget the plague's grim tonics. You're here to breathe the softest medieval high, and it's like a lullaby in the air. You ease onto a wooden bench outside a thatched hut, the wood worn smooth by years of weary sitters. A woman tends a small burner, feeding it dried lavender and chamomile, their sweet floral notes curling into the night. Historical records show such herbs were burned in medieval homes to soothe nerves and invite sleep, especially in times of unrest. But here's the quirky bit. Some villagers added mullein, a fuzzy leaf that, when smoked, made dreams feel like epic sagas. Think knights battling clouds. You lean closer, the vapor's warmth kissing your face, and feel your shoulders loosen, like you're shedding the battlefield's tension. The village is a whisper of sounds. Crickets, a distant dog's bark, and the burner's soft hiss. The woman offers you a whiff from a clay pipe stuffed with valerian, its earthy scent promising a nap deeper than a noble's wine cellar. You take a shallow puff, mindful of the healer's risky brews, and feel your thoughts blur, soft as fog. It's not the witch's datura or the sailor's grog, just a gentle nudge toward dreamland. Historians still argue whether these vapors were medicine or ritual, meant to heal or commune with spirits. You're betting on comfort, but the stars above make you wonder. You settle back, the bench creaking, and watch the smoke spiral toward the sky. A man nearby, his face etched with plowman's lines, inhales from his own burner and hums a lullaby, claiming the smoke showed him his late wife's smile. You squint at the curls, nothing but haze. Still, his peace is real, and you get it. These vapors aren't about visions, they're about rest, a small rebellion against dawn's demands. You chuckle, recalling when you tried relaxing with a meditation app and fell asleep mid-ohm. The joke's on him. His wife might be the mullein talking, but he's happier than the king with his poppy vial. Your eyes drift to a child tossing dried betony into another burner, its sharp scent cutting through the lavender. That festival herb, once a plague shield, now doubles as a sleep aid, though some say it sparks dreams of talking owls. You're glad it's just a pinch. Too much betony, and you're debating philosophy with the village goat. The child's mother watches, her eyes heavy but calm, and you're struck by the village's quiet strength. Surviving plague, lords, and hunger with nothing but plants and hope. The night's rhythm is slow, a heartbeat of soft puffs and murmurs. You notice a faint trace of poppy seeds in a nearby burner, likely a nod to the healer's tonics but milder, meant to ease rather than numb. It's a risky touch. One spark too many, and you're out till noon. You smirk, imagining the priest's face if he caught this pagan smoke. He'd probably preach, then nap in the fumes himself. The joke's on him. These villagers are outsmarting his sermons with every breath. The lavender's scent wraps you tighter, your eyelids drooping as the bench feels softer, like a cloud. You're not chasing visions, but the vapors weave a gentle spell, blurring the edges of market stalls, battlefields, and royal halls. This is the village's heart, simple, stubborn, seeking rest. The stars blur, and the night's hum grows fainter, inviting you to drift. Wind down. You're sinking now, the village fading into a soft, smoky haze, like a painting left in the rain. The lavender lingers, a whisper on your breath, carrying you past the chaos of taverns and courts, past the fire of witches and the clash of swords. You're floating, the world's weight lifting, each memory of mandrake, grog, and fevered tonics melting into a quiet glow. Let the stars above be your blanket, their light, a gentle promise that rest is yours. The night's done its work, wrapping you in peace, easing your mind to a place where dreams wait, soft and unhurried. Close your eyes, let the hum of the world fade, and slip into sleep's embrace, where nothing chases you but the whisper of a breeze. Good night.